In another movie, I've shown you how to do the colossal faux cable on a bulky machine. This time, I'm showing you the standard gauge version and including a free Scoody pattern. Today's demo is on a pass-up. The pattern works on all standard gauge, that is 4.5 to 5 millimeter machines. And as I demonstrate, I'll give you notes on doing it on machines other than pass-ups. The written pattern has been added to my special Scoodies book. Everybody who already owns the book will receive an email telling them they have access to an additional pattern. Everybody who buys the book from this point going forward will have access to it when they buy. And the written pattern has a third gauge, one intended for mid-gauge machines. Also a ladies' size pattern. We start off by knitting the first scarf tail. You may use any cast on or bind off you like, but I do have a discussion of that at the end of the movie. Use 61 needles in total, with both end needles on the back or main bed. We're set up for every other needle rib. About stitch size 4/4 works for me on both my pass-up and my Japanese machines. Somewhere from 4 to 5 works best for Superbas. The yarn should be a smooth one that gets about 7 stitches per inch when you knit in stockinette. Knitting ribbing is stockinette settings on both beds for every machine that I know of. On Superbas, we definitely need weights. On pass-ups, we don't need weights. We do need orange strippers. One of my orange strippers is red because it is from my old Pinky machine. On pass-ups, we definitely need edge clips in place throughout the project. You may knit the tails to any length that you like. Just record whatever your row count is for the first one so you can duplicate it on the second one. And I do not believe in making the tails for girls' scarves long enough that they could be knotted, because with young girls this could be a hazard when playing. We don't want the scarf to catch on something. So both scarf tails are just knit one, purl one ribbing to whatever length you want. Now change to this needle setup. I know you can't see it, so we'll look at it a piece at a time. The left 8 stitches are still set up for 1 by 1 rib. The next 10 are all on the back or main bed. The 3 after that are set up as though for ribbing again. Now 19 more on the main or back bed. To the right of them, the next 3 are set up as though for ribbing. These are those same 3 stitches. The right edge of the work mirrors the left edge with 9 more stitches on the main or back bed and the 8 final stitches set up as though for ribbing. There's the overall layout one more time. The back bed remains set for normal knitting, in for this machine, in for quite a lot of machines, and about stitch size 6 or 6 to 7. What we now want the front or ribber bed to do is knit in one direction and tuck in the other direction. For pass-ups, this is AX with the left arrow key. I find it usually works to use about 1 stitch size smaller on the front bed than on the back bed for the next stitch we're going to do. Here's the brother setup, and by the way, what you're looking for is half fisherman's rib settings. That will get the machine to do what you're asking it to do. It may also be called English rib, as it is in the Singer manuals. This is from the SRP 50 manual. Superbas manage this with the tuck plus the circular arrow keys pressed. Pass-ups, you do need pushers up underneath the needles that are in work on the front bed. So we will just let all of the needles and the locks or carriages do their work, and we'll concentrate our hand manipulation on the center stitches. Every time after knitting 2 rows, we'll move 7 of them over 1 space to the right. If you have a multi-prong tool, that can be very useful, or you can use a series of them. Here I'm using multi-prong tools only minimally because it enables me to stay out of your way, and also to be sure that I did everything and got it settled correctly. Every time we empty a needle, we must leave it in work so it picks up and starts knitting. I've knitted 2 rows, And now I need to make the same maneuver again, but moving the whole batch one stitch to the right. So instead of starting on stitch 1 at the left, I'm starting at stitch 2. And 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 will all move one needle to the right. Then stitch 2, or needle 2, is empty and it must come back to work. And we knit 2 rows. I'm going to be repeating that across the bed, this time starting with stitch 3. And while I do it, so you can watch, I'm going to make a few other notes for you. One is that on almost every machine, a little extra weight on the outside edges can keep them knitting off nicely. Here are 2 passive notes. I did succeed using orange strippers throughout. Blue strippers would be a helpful idea if you have them. I do have them, but I wanted to tell you if orange would work, and they do. Japanese knitters and Superba knitters, you are absolutely going to need the river comb and river weights, however much you normally would use. But your second bed is not going to function well and knit off nicely unless you use the comb and weights. Passive knitters, it's optional for you. They can help. I did not use them just to make sure it would succeed, and it does succeed. But if you have the comb and weights, there's no good reason not to use the comb and a little bit of weight. Several things at once are happening to the fabric. These lacy holes are created every time we empty a needle but leave it in work to pick up a new stitch. The 7 transferred stitches are creating this design. Half fisherman's rib is forming automatically here because of how we have the front bed or river set up. This would ordinarily leave the front edge a little bit floppier than I would like, but we will eventually finish it with worm trim. That's a separate project that we'll do after the rest of this comes off of the machine. These 7 stitches, I am calling the left one number 1 and the right one number 7 of the group that always move. When number 7 reaches the 19th needle and lands on it, we are done. We knit 2 more rows and then begin on the left, with 1 being the leftmost of the 19 stitches and 7 being the 7th from the left. Work 7 complete repeats of this pattern. You will be at row 168 when you are finished. If we were to drop down the beds for some reason, this is what you would see in between them. And here we come. This is my last transfer. Time to begin again. As you sit and knit, you can just barely see these lacy holes forming. Because of the bed spacing, they covered up your view from the camera. But these can help you double check that you're moving the correct 7 stitches. You should always begin on the left with the one that is just to the right of where a lacy hole was made last time. After the final transfer on the final repeat, knit 2 rows without moving anything, then return to your ribbing settings, stitch size, needle arrangement, everything. Consult your notes to find out how many rows that you knitted for the first tail and knit the second scarf tail. Then bind off. Now the casting on and binding off note. Your easiest cast on in ribbing is, of course, the tubular cast on. And any bind off that you like is not going to match that very well. So here's my suggestion. Begin in waste yarn. If you need a comb and weights, hang them in that. Cast on by chain stitching around the needle shanks. Knit 1 stockinette row. If you're using a passive, you must knit that row manually. You can't knit back from hold after the chain stitch around the needle shank. And you should thread the yarn through the eyelet before doing the chain stitch and the manual row. And there are several ways you can get a matching or close to matching chain stitch bind off. I prefer to transfer everything to the back or main bed, and for Japanese machines, bind off around the gate pegs. For pass-ups and superbas, which do not have gate pegs, the transfer bind-off looks nice. If you're comfortable binding off in ribbing, moving your wrist to and fro with the stitches still on the ribber, that is also an option. Worm trim is hang 3 stitches, knit 6 rows, hang another 3 stitches on the same needles, and repeat. I'm not really hanging right now. I'm just manipulating the stitches to show you what great openings the half fisherman's rib fabric offers for hanging the edge. There are existing openings that are perfectly spaced. Use either what you would use as a stockinette stitch size or one number smaller. On the opposite edge from the worm trim, fold here and seam the edges together to make the center back seam that goes down the back of the head. On a Scoody made for children, I would suggest using a closure if you want one that will give up under pressure. This one is actually Velcro. Half of it is on each yarn tail, and then I sewed ribbon roses over the top so as to mask where I had stitched the Velcro. Really big snaps that are 1 inch across are also available and also a good idea. Here's an example of how much difference to the look the particular yarn can make. Here's my bulky sample, and I think that's what you may need for a really convincing faux cable. I do like my beige standard gauge sample. It's made with a very smooth yarn that's also somewhat harder of twist than the coral colored yarn. But for a more convincing cable, you might want a yarn that was a little bouncier, stretchier, and less hard twisted.